Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast, where we explore the mindset, skill set, and habit set of leadership communication. Using these tips, techniques, and tactics, you'll be able to talk like a leader to build better relationships and get more done. Your host is Guy Harris, who has more than 20 years of combined professional and military experience in consulting, coaching, and training in areas like team and interaction dynamics, communication strategies and tactics, as well as emotional intelligence. Take it away, Guy.
As we were preparing this episode for posting, I noticed there's one word that I say over and over in this episode that could be easily confused. I say the word competence, C-O-M-P-E-T-E-N-C-E. I'm speaking with regard to a person's ability to achieve a task successfully. So hopefully that'll clear things up as you listen to this episode. Hi, this is Guy Harris. Welcome to the Talk Like a Leader podcast. This week, I have the privilege to have my good friend and colleague back on the podcast, Carl Smith. Welcome, Carl, back to the Talk Like a Leader podcast.
Good to be here, Guy. Good to be here.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. So I'll just let everybody know the topic of the conversation today is some thoughts on building trust, building and protecting trust. So the idea, let's frame this up a little bit first before I throw a question to Carl. As we look at trust and how it applies to our communication, there are two things to remember, or I should say one thing to remember is that there are two sides of trust or two parts of trust. There's transactional trust, meaning that I trust in your capability or willingness to do this, or the fact that you follow through on actions. Transactional, you could say task accomplishment trust. So that's the transactional side or the task side. And then there's emotional trust, meaning we have emotional security and safety with each other, meaning that our relationship is sound and secure and all that kind of stuff. So there are two sides of trust. There's transactional or task trust, and there's relational or people trust. And in the context of talking like a leader and some things we've talked about on the podcast, the DISC model, it gives us a framework to think about how different people view the relative importance of those two ideas. I'll say that in the end, they both have to be satisfied to have a good, trusting relationship with a person. It's important to realize, though, that not everybody puts them in the same priority. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do different people put things in different priorities? So here's the roles we're going to play today. I'm the task-oriented person for this conversation. Carl is the people-oriented person. And we're going to bring our different perspectives from the table. And I think you'll find it fascinating to hear how our natural inclinations are different and how that can actually lead us to have some terrible communications if we're not aware of this problem. So, Carl, let me throw it to you. Some thoughts on trust and from your perspective, a person who has very heavy people-oriented traits. What's your view of what it takes to build and protect trust with a person?
You know, something you said earlier, Guy, that resonated, and I don't even know that you realize what you said, but it was very profound. Many times you and I, when we do workshops and seminars and sessions, we talk about this transactional trust versus relational trust. Mm-hmm. But I love how you framed it up. You said emotion. I have this ability to have, I like to say, emotional safety.
Yeah, good point.
Emotional connection, that I feel liked, appreciated, accepted, that there are positive thoughts about me and our relationship. And it really is emotional. And so what's fascinating about this whole perspective is how much that drives trust. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's about having a connection and knowing that we are able to talk, able to relate, have good times, have a sense of safety in communicating with each other. And that really is the catalyst to start trust.
So I'm going to follow up on that comment a little bit, Carl, just to kind of ask a question, make sure I'm hearing this right. Well, first of all, the first part of the question is it true for you that in order to build really deep trust with a person, both pieces of the equation have to come together? You have to feel emotionally safe and secure with the person, and at the same time, you have to feel like they're going to follow through on what they said they're going to do. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely.
Okay, so both have to be there for you. And here's the thing. As a task-oriented person, I'm going to say for me, that's true also. Both have to be present. Now let's get to where I think it's different, and based on what you just said. Is it true that for you, you think about the task part of the trust or the following through on the commitment part of the trust after you feel emotionally safe with the person? Or maybe I'll say that a different way. Until you feel emotionally safe with the person, whether they follow through or not doesn't matter that much. Is that a fair way to say it?
Absolutely. And to add to that, it's a sense of connection. It's a sense of we enjoy each other's company. We have similarities, commonality. So it's relational. And I'll give you a great example of this. When I get my car serviced, there's a gentleman here in Dallas that his name's Bobby. I can tell you, he does a great job, fixing cars. He's
in terms of getting the car fixed, the actual fixing the car is okay.
Right. Yeah,
okay.
No, he's good at that. I mean, it's his organization, his company. I know Bobby has a daughter. I know she's in college. I know about a lot about his personal life. And I go to him because I like him. Because I like him means I trust him. Does he do a good job? Yes. But I will pass by other repair shops to go to Bobby.
So people who are, at least based on what you know about them, technically as competent and maybe arguably in some areas slightly better even in some things, is not as important to you in the trust factor as whether you like them and feel emotionally safe with them. Is that a fair statement?
That's very, very fair.
So is this true from a leadership perspective, communication perspective, a person who's very good at getting tasks done and accomplishing tasks for you on your team or at your request and is not able to somehow relationally connect with you, doesn't quite get the full measure of trust? There's always like a little bit of a disconnect if there's not this emotional safety aspect to it.
Absolutely.
Well, interesting. On the flip side of that, here's my perspective. And actually, let me go back to the mechanic because I think this might illustrate the point. Is it true that if you're looking for a mechanic, you will first look for a mechanic you like, and then find out if they're technically competent?
Yes.
And so if you find somebody you like who isn't technically competent, you might then decide to go someplace else where you can get both satisfied.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so here's the difference from how I see things. I don't even start to think about whether I like you or not until I decide that you're technically competent. So I will go about it in a different order. And the interesting thing is, I mean, like you, Carl, I'm not going to go to a car, even though I'm very task oriented and I like stuff done right and all that kind of stuff. I'm still going to look for some place that I feel comfortable, that they like me and we can interact, all that kind of stuff. It's just that I never get to the point of deciding whether I like them or not until I've decided they're technically competent. So it's a different order of approach.
Yes.
And I think the really interesting, so here's what that means for me. See if there's a flip for you. If there's somebody on my team or a leader with whom I'm interacting, and I know that they're very, very relational and friendly, yet they don't follow through on their actions, I will pay attention to follow through on actions long before I think about whether they're friendly. I actually don't care if they're friendly if they don't follow through. And I will tend, this is harsh, tend to discount them and not trust them because they didn't follow through. Like the first thing I look at is, did you show up on time? Did you live up to your commitment? If you didn't, then that's awesome. You can be friendly all day long, and I'm gonna have our time with you. Is it true that if somebody is friendly and engaging and kind and supportive, you will tend to cut them some slack on whether they were on time, at least in the early stages of the relationship?
Absolutely.
And so you'll give them more time to be technically competent if they're friendly.
Yes. And what that translates for me is that they're caring, that they're sincere, that they have the right heart, especially as a leader.
And this is so funny because I have a completely opposite perspective.
It's nuts.
I don't care how nice you are if you don't know how to do your job. And I eventually, it's trying to find a way to verbalize it. It's not that the caring doesn't matter. I mean, if I'm going to set aside unethical and stuff like that, because let's just assume that we're ethical people that we're dealing with. Somebody who's super friendly then doesn't follow through, I'm probably not going to, I won't tend to give them too much grace long term.
Right.
You're going to have to prove you're confident before I decide if I like you or not.
Right.
And you're the complete opposite, bud.
Yep.
If I'm friendly, you'll give me a chance to prove myself.
And that's exactly it. Absolutely.
So I think, we're running up against our time limit for what we promised listeners, that we won't consistently exceed the time limit. And I think I want to revisit some of this with you and maybe some later episodes. Here's what I think we've come to is that there are two components of trust. There's transactional trust and relational or emotional trust. And for most people, most of the people on your team, both probably need to be satisfied. It's true that you need to follow through on your commitments, and it's true that you need to be kind and protect the relationship. That as a leader, you don't get to pick one over the other.
It's both.
From a building trust perspective, though, it's important for you to know where the members of your team are coming at this.
Yes.
So do you need to, with an individual or a collection of people, do you need to be more focused on building the relationship first so that you can get to the point you can prove your competence? Or do you need to focus on proving your competence first so you can get to the point of building your relationship?
Yes.
And that's the art of talking like a leader. And any closing thought that you want to add before I wrap it up here, Carl?
No, I think it's so important. And this is what we're talking about are major elements that people forget, especially in leadership, especially when people have so much going on and they have so much responsibility. It's worth investing to not only know people and what tends to drive them to build trust, whether it's transactional or relational. It's really both.
It's really both in the end. Yep.
But you really do need to invest the time to understand that person.
And I think that's a good place to leave it for today, is this idea that as a leader, whatever your natural perspective is, in the end, you got to really get good at both. You don't just get to pick one because that's the one comfortable for you. The key to building trust with your team in terms of how you communicate with people, where you focus your interactions with them. If you know the players, you can know how to start the process. If they're really super task-oriented, the D or C traits, as we talk about in the DISC model, you probably want to prove competence before you worry about building a relationship. That doesn't mean you're unkind. Just focus on competence demonstration first. Likewise, if you got people with a lot of supportive and inspiring traits, you might want to focus first on making a connection before you worry so much about demonstrating your competence. And if you'll develop the skill of understanding the members of your team so you know the best way to engage with them in terms of this trust, what we call the trust ladder. How do you climb the ladder of trust? Which rung you need to step on first, competence or relationship? If you will take the time to understand that about your team members and learn how to adjust the way you interact, you can talk like a leader. This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.